In this video, I'll do a little fine-tuning on my scene before I get to rendering. First, as you can see, there's no back to these buildings, so I'm going to change the glass material around just a little bit. I'll press M for materials, and L to lay out the materials in my scene. Down here somewhere is actually the glass I'm using. It's called Glass Clear, and it's been applied to a lot of the windows and storefronts. What I'll do for this, to stylize it and camouflage a bit, is pull back the transparency and the refraction. Pulling this down lets a little more of the diffuse color show, and that diffuse color being black will still reflect and look like glass, but in buildings whose lights inside are off. Just a little transparency hints at what's going on inside, but doesn't let you see through. Probably about 0.15 is pretty good here. I'll also bump up the incandescence, or self-illumination, of my windows and do a bit of cleanup and renaming. For example, right above it is a material called Test Windows, and I think I'll rename this to Lit Windows first. In this material, double-clicking on it to make sure I'm working in the right one, I'll scroll up and go to the Self-Illumination Glow section. Right now what we're seeing is it is unitless with a value of 1 and has a map in that filter color. And this map is actually that same diffuse color that's governing the way the windows look. In here then, I may end up boosting up the units just a little bit so it looks right. What I'll do, to hazard a guess based on the renderings I've seen, is push up this value to 2. And then I'll do a quick render from camera 1 halfway up the building, just to see if I'm on target. I'll pull up that rendered frame window and edit the region, sizing it around as I need, pulling that region around here in the view, and looking at some of the windows. In a quick test, it should look pretty good. I can see in here when I pull up this rendering dialog that they're visible, but a little dim, but showing the lighting in the scene. So I'm okay with it, figuring I'll put a glow on in post later if I'd like. I also noticed in looking at this window that something is amiss in the camera. When we pan down, starting out here at frame 1, the verticals on the building are not quite vertical. I'll select my camera, clicking on the camera label and choosing Select Camera. What we can see here is the Z height of the camera starting out is 65.179. However, right-clicking and choosing Select Camera Target shows us the target is a little bit high, causing the camera to not quite be vertical. I'll put that same height in here for the target, making sure I turn on Auto Key to overwrite the keyframe I've got, and here's that value, 65.179. Now you don't have to be exactly this precise. You could just pan the camera down, but doing it with Auto Key on makes sure that we can see that camera correctly and animate it correctly to overwrite those keys. Now my verticals are vertical and the building doesn't appear to be leaning back. I'll scrub forward on the timeline up to the top and do the same thing. There's the Z of, the camera target. How can I tell? Right-clicking and choosing Select Camera lets me know I have the target selected. Or I could look over on the command panel and there's the name of the selected object. I'm going to even up the camera with the target here, choosing that value on the Z and copying, right-clicking and selecting the camera, and pasting that value in. I'll turn off Auto Key and check it out just in a wireframe, pressing F3, going back to frame 0 and pressing play. And now what it looks like is that camera is panning or craning up the building smoothly, and the building's verticals are vertical. That means the building doesn't look like it's leaning back. We can see out here I've got these buildings, or these fragments, out here in space. I'll go into a top view, making sure I hit Escape to get out of that region, and deal with those buildings. I press Shift F to turn off the safe frame, and there they are. What I'll do is just take these building chunks and use them in my scene to populate in the background. They don't really ground in anything, and that's perfectly fine. What I'm after, though, picking both and then pressing spacebar for the selection lock, is that they're just taller in general than my other buildings. Maybe even going just right down to the ground, lit all the way up. But in a camera view, say camera 2, I may just use them to block what's going on. In camera 1 then, this gives me the opportunity to pull back just a bit, or if I see through, I'll just see a little bit of lit glass. Scrubbing forward then lets me see just maybe a little bit of that side building through there and blocks any openings. If I have other cameras in the scene, I can use these buildings as background, just to break up any large areas that are blank. I want to look over my materials and do a couple of last test renders, panning forward here in the scene to different places, trying some renders and seeing if everything works. Switching to the other camera, camera 2, starting at frame 0, doing a quick test and seeing if the verticals are vertical and there's any obvious gaps. I'll scrub forward a bit, do one last test, and see how this looks. It's rendering my region, and I can see it's nice and dark, but the light on the bus stop is starting to come in. It's always good to test render along the path of the camera, doing some spot checking to make sure there's no obvious issues we're going to see. I like the way it looks, and I'm ready to get the render set up.